It's 6:30. Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee of 24th of June 2025. My name is Councillor Mackover. I'll be chairing this evening's Planning Committee. To my right, my fellow councillors who, together with me, will be making the decisions. And on my left are our council planning and legal officers who will be taking us through the cases and providing technical advice to us. But just to let you know what's on the agenda today and the running order, for anyone who's here for Earls Court Square, that is now not being heard tonight, so you're welcome to stay or to go home. But the running order, just so you know, is Kensal House, Sunningdale Gardens, Holland Park, Palace Place Mansions, South End, Westbourne Grove, Queensdale Walk, Feeney Arms, Cheney Walk, Oakley House and Treadgold House. Some of the cases don't have speakers and are likely to go quite swiftly. Others do have speakers, and in order so that things are fair for everyone, we'll be timing the contributions to 3 minutes for each side. So that's the running order. Now just looking at sort of the procedural agenda items. Apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Lane, but we are quorate and will continue. Any declarations of interest? None. Any other declarations? I've got one, just to say that the case N63 Palace Place Mansions is in my ward. So in the course of my normal duties, I have visited the building and met some of the speakers from time to time and in the past, but I've not actually met any of the residents since this application was made. I've not given any opinion on the merits of this application, and therefore I remain non-predetermined, and I can take part in the decision tonight. Councillor Siren.
So I would also like to declare that I have met residents from Palace Place Mansions as well. It's my surgery. I'm an Abingdon Ward councillor, and a couple of the residents on 2 occasions did come to my surgery, but again, I did not discuss this case with them or offer any advice. I directed them to the ward councillors, not this ward councillor, one of the other ones. So I feel able to sit on this case this evening.
Thank you. Okay, without any other agenda items, we can move straight to the cases. Case 1 is Kensal House.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum report and the changes to the reason for the recommended conditions 3 and 4. The application is being presented to members this evening as the council are the applicant. The application seeks listed building consent for the replacement of the flat entrance doors to meet the current fire regulations. Officer's recommendation is to grant listed building consent subject to the recommended conditions as set out within the report. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no speakers. Any questions from councillors? There are no objections. No, okay. Well, we've all read the pack. If people are happy to move straight to a decision, officer recommendation is to grant listed building consent. Can I see those in favour? That item is granted, thank you. Case 2, Sunningdale Gardens.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for the presentation to come on the slides. There we go. Again, I draw members' attention to the addendum report. The application site relates to number 1 and number 1A, Sunningdale Gardens. This is outlined on red on this slide before you. The building consists of a lower ground or basement flat, known as number 1A, and a residential property known as number 1 at the upper levels. The existing basement floor plan can be seen on this slide. This is the existing flat known as 1A. The flat is accessed via the front light well and includes a bedroom, kitchen and living space. The property includes a rear garden. I'll just circle, this is the rear garden here, the bedroom, kitchen and living and dining room, and the existing entrance to the flat is via the steps from the light well into the front here. The proposed basement floor plan can be seen on this slide. The proposal seeks to amalgamate number 1A and number 1. The proposed basement floor plan includes a new staircase to connect this floor to the upper floors. The floor plan would retain a bedroom at this level. This slide shows photos of the front of the building and the access to the lower ground floor flat. Members can also note the location of these windows within the light well, which is referenced within the officer's report. Lastly, this slide shows photos of the existing flat, number 1A. You can see the existing kitchen, living and dining, and garden area. To conclude, the officer recommendation is to refuse planning permission on the basis that the proposal fails to protect the existing residential accommodation and would be contrary to policy HO1 of the local plan. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a speaker for this case for the agent for the applicant, Glenn Christen. Thank you. Please go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Dear committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present our case. The applicant is especially grateful as this application has been recommended for refusal by officers, so we truly appreciate your time and consideration. The property is a Victorian end of terrace at 1 Sunningdale Gardens, owned by the applicant's family since the 1970s and his home since birth. It has always been a single dwelling, with the basement historically part of the house and internally connected to the upper floors, i.e. not a separate flat. In 2015, the applicant's father died and ownership passed to the applicant's mother, who was in ill health. Her financial and legal difficulties with the property were made worse by her prior divorce to the applicant's father. To avoid losing the family home, a leasehold was created for the basement, allowing the applicant to purchase it from his mother, who was to move upstairs. Internal access was removed and a kitchen and bathroom added at basement level. These works were completed in December 2015 without planning permission. The applicant lived in the basement while caring for his mother until her death in 2018, after which he became the owner of the entire property, albeit divided into 2 legal entities. Due to COVID, financial constraints, and an ongoing legal dispute, he moved upstairs and began renting out the basement from mid-2020, intending to reverse the unauthorized conversion at a later date. This application seeks to reunite the 2 flats and end the unauthorized short-term use of the basement as a separate flat. Given the unique land use history, the proposal is not considered contrary to any strategic or long-term policies in the local plan. Indeed, had planners known of the conversion earlier, enforcement to restore the property as a single home might have been pursued. Unlike cases where flats are bought separately to combine, both units have always been under one ownership. The proposal reverses a recent unauthorized change, so it won't set an undesirable precedent. Even if the application were seen as departing from long-term strategic policies, which I don't believe they do, it would still meet the conditions under which such amalgamation could reasonably be permitted. The unauthorized basement flat has several issues to make it unsuitable for long-term self-contained use. It is completely below street level and surrounded by boundary walls, relying on narrow light wells for natural light. Daylight and sunlight levels are significantly limited. Each room, the bedroom, small kitchen, and living area fails to meet the daylight standards set by the building research establishment. Ceiling heights are also below the minimum requirements of the London Plan, which makes the situation even more challenging. Further compounding these problems is a complete lack of privacy. The property's corner location and the curvature of the side street result in all windows, including the rear light well, being fully exposed to passers-by. Occupants must keep blinds drawn at all times, further reducing daylight and creating a year-round reliance on artificial lighting. The cumulative effect is a persistent sense of enclosure, which undermines the flat's suitability for long-term self-contained occupation. Finally, the site is at risk of surface water flooding, with 2 floods recorded nearby in 2007. The original conversion would likely have been refused planning permission on flood risk grounds alone. In conclusion, by reversing the unauthorized conversion, this proposal would resolve all of these issues, returning the property to a single-family home. It would also restore access to private outdoor space for the upper floors, currently lacking, addressing a further recognized deficiency in external amenity provision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? Councillor Denkode.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to ask, as you were speaking, because obviously I've read the papers, and there's, it is a complicated history, and this has happened all over the borough, as we know. I'm just a bit confused, because I'm not necessarily against this. I'm making up my mind here. I'm just a bit confused about the way you've talked about the lower ground floor, the basement flat. Because obviously a lot of people live like that, and saying that it's dark and it's prone to flooding and all the rest of it. Are you saying that the basement area is just going to be abandoned then because it's so unsuitable? I'm just a bit confused about how you're talking about it, because sure. As I say, of all these terrace homes, somebody lives in a flat like that. So the case you're making didn't ring true to me. I'm not clear what you meant by that.
Sure. So of course, a lot of these concerns that are outlined are particularly persistent because it's a flat that is solely contained at basement level. So of course, post amalgamation, it would only be part of the dwelling. So at least there would be other rooms for respite from, incursion of privacy. If there's flood risk, there's respite on the upper floors. The upper floors will have access to suitable daylight. So in terms of the amalgamation itself, that would rectify those issues. Now, your other question was about, well, isn't every basement development essentially affected by these deficiencies? And I visited the site. It's very different in two ways. Now, in most cases, if you got a basement flat, the rear part of it will be fully enclosed, and then there might be some overlooking from the front of the site. Now, in this case, because of its corner location and because of the street curvature, the rear of the property is also completely exposed to view. So wherever you are inside this flat, you've constantly got someone looking into the bedroom from the communal gardens, looking into the kitchen from the side road, looking into the living room from the...
Okay, no, I understand. I just don't understand the case you're making. Even I'm trying to put that aside because that wasn't helpful to me at all. It sounds like you're writing off every single basement flat in the borough, of which many are overseen and so on. So, yeah, anyway, I'm going to have to put that aside because I didn't find that helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Any questions to officers? I'll go with one, which is... we've heard that there are elements of substandard about this in terms of light and views. How did officers consider these to be acceptable in this case?
Thank you, Councillor. So policy HO1, which relates to the amalgamation, within the preamble to the policy, it does talk about those exceptional circumstances where an amalgamation may be granted. That's where it talks about the accommodation being substandard. Within that policy and within the preamble, it talks about both the units being amalgamated have to be substandard. In this case, officers have considered that the basement flat is an acceptable standard. It does have adequate light, adequate ventilation, and as you can see, officers did visit the property as well. And it's also the assessment that the above ground flat, the flat 1, also is above standards, meets minimum space standards. So officers are satisfied that the quality of that accommodation is acceptable, and therefore we would resist the loss of it through the amalgamation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we heard enough to proceed towards a vote. Officer recommendation is to refuse. Can I see those in favour of refusal? Right. So we now need to have some reasons proposed why this might go a different way. Is that the way we're going to do it? Yeah. Okay. So any reasons people would like to propose?
Well, in my mind, it's really a single-family home that's been subject to changes in the family over the years, but to me it's just being returned to how it was originally. It does sound pretty substandard in some ways, and I can see how amalgamating it back into the way that it was intended will be a better use of the space.
Thank you. I see that looks like it's getting nods from people. So it's substandard.
I think it's more about. I think it's more about the being in the family for many years, and that's how it was originally intended to be.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if the planning history is relevant or not, but to
Yeah.
me that's the
So
way-
special circumstances
because
of
a
its
single
ownership
family.
structure. Yeah.
It's a special. It's a
Yeah.
single family that
Yeah.
has had changes over the years, as
Yeah.
we all do. But
Okay, that's fine. Have you got what you need?
Yes, that's really helpful. It would just be, we would recommend that there's a time limit condition and a plans condition added to any, move to approve.
Yeah, as normal conditions of plan time within and to implement. And also in this particular case, it looks like, as it was never consented to be a separate flat, even though it's immune from enforcement action, I think it said in one of the papers, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's lawful, because it never received permission to become a separate flat in the first place. All right, so we need a proposer for a recommendation to grant using those reasons. Councillor Siren propose. Councillors Vedeniuk to second. For the new motion, those in favour of the motion to grant this application, please show. Thank you. That Sunningdale Gardens amalgamation is granted. Thank you very much. Case 3 is 67 Holland Park, planning and listed building.
Thank you, Chairman. The applications before members this evening seek planning permission and listed building consent for the installation of 2 air source heat pump units to the side passage and the associated internal units. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission and listed building consent subject to the recommended conditions. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no speakers. I've got a question to officers, if I may kick off, which is, have you seen or are we conditioning any details of the unit enclosure and any pipe work that it can be as visually unintrusive as possible?
Thank you. So I don't believe the units are going to be housed in an enclosure. We are looking to put recommended conditions on the planning permission which will control the noise from the units and also ensure that they're located on anti-vibration mounts. In terms of the listed building consent, we have asked in recommended condition 3 for the submission of details for the proposed unit, which would be controlled through that condition 3, and also in terms of the fabric of the building, recommended condition 4 would control the existing wall and ceiling plaster work.
That's helpful, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Siren and then Councillor Denkode.
Thank you, Chair. So my question was really about the requirement for planning permission. I seem to recall there was a case, I think it went through the inspector, about an air pump, and I honestly can't remember the details of it. I tried to find it, but maybe you'll remember. And I think the finding was that planning permission is not required for an air heat pump, given the whole net zero and given the we're trying to move towards this. So can you just tell us if you remember that case and if planning permission is required for something like this? Because I guess we get many of them, right?
Yes, you're correct. We get quite a few. I don't recall the exact case that you're referencing. There are instances where air source heat pumps can be installed without the need for planning permission. That's usually under permitted development. I think in this instance, perhaps because the building's listed, it doesn't benefit from permitted development or development permitted under that regulation, which is why planning permission has been sought.
Councillor Denkode.
Thank you, Chair. I just was a little bit worried. I was listening to something on the radio the other day about heat pumps and that they are noisier than air conditioners. Given the number of complaints and concerns we have about air conditioning units, do we have any idea whether or not they are actually as noisy as a washing machine, as somebody was suggesting, or is that just a bit of the myths that certain people in the world are trying to send around? Do we have any idea how noisy they are? Because I've never been anywhere near one.
Thank you. So the application was supported by a noise report, which shows compliance with the adopted noise SPD. In terms of the noise emissions, we have got recommended condition 3, which relates to the background noise and what that measurement would be and how quiet it needs to be. So in theory, with that condition, it shouldn't be audible to any of the nearest residential properties. So it's still controlled the same way as we would an air conditioning unit as well. So it has to adhere to those criteria.
Okay, so that if it's with air conditioning, I remember Councillor Campion saying many years ago, if you can hear it, it's illegal. Basically, it's breached the... Okay, no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? Okay. We've got 2 votes to move to. First is for Planning Permission. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Planning permission is granted. And now for listed building consent, again, officer recommendation to grant listed building. See those in favour? Thank you. That's granted as well. Next case is Palace Place Mansions.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum report, which includes an additional condition relating to the materials of the proposed dormer window. This condition has been discussed and agreed by the applicant team. The application site relates to Palace Place Mansions, identified with the red arrow on this slide. The application before members this evening seeks planning permission for the construction of a mansard roof extension to provide 4 new residential units. The building is within the Kensington Court Conservation Area, and there are Grade 2 listed buildings opposite the site. The existing front elevation can be seen on this slide. The existing building is 4 stories in height and includes a lower ground floor level. The building has front and rear light wells. The proposed front elevation can be seen on this slide. I would draw members' attention to the mansard roof extension here. The mansard roof extension has been designed with a mezzanine level, dormer windows and voids within the roof massing to provide light into the amenity spaces. The existing rear elevation can be seen on this slide. And the proposed rear elevation can be seen here. The rear elevation will include outdoor amenity spaces marked by the metal railings, which members may note in these locations here. This slide shows the proposed section, which is known as proposed section AA. I would draw members' attention to the height measurements shown on this plan, which have also been provided within your pack this evening. This section is proposed section BB and just shows you a little bit of a closer image of the proposed mansard with the mezzanine level. The proposed roof plan can be seen on this slide. I would draw members' attention to the light well, the existing light well, which would be retained as part of the development. The proposed plans can be seen on this floor. So this is the 4th floor on the left-hand side and then the mezzanine level on the right-hand side. The proposal would provide 4 new residential units identified by the different colourings on the plans. Just going to go through some of the verified images that's been provided as part of the pack. So members can note the proposed mansard extension in this area here. And again, another view provided and the mansard extension in this area here. And then the last view, just looking down towards the site from Kensington High Street, and the proposed mansard extension in this area here. And then just to briefly touch on the mezzanine level and the calculation, I know this has been pointed out as part of the addendum report and obviously referenced in the officer's report. This has been provided from the applicant team to show how that's been calculated. So the areas identified by the purple has been included within the calculation. So the mezzanine level would equate to 48.2% in a percentage when comparing to the 4th floor. And just lastly, I've just taken this from the design and access statement provided in support of the application. I just thought this was helpful just to show the differing roof forms within the surrounding context. So the existing building, or the application building, sorry, is identified in the red, and members can note kind of the varied roof forms, including mansards, which are 2-storey or double height as well. That concludes my presentation this evening. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure permit-free parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have speakers for this case. I think we'll go with the objectors first. I can see Michael Bach and a number of other names. Mr. Bach, are you sort of coordinating in terms of...
Yes, I'm going to speak.
You are the...
But others will answer questions.
Fine. Thank you very much.
I'm the chair of the Planning Committee of the Kensington Society, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of residents of Palace Place Mansions. This application is highly misleading and confusing because it seeks to evade scrutiny by denying that it involves 2 additional stories, and secondly, designing them to evade triggering requirements for scrutinising fire safety. The applicant has designed a 2-storey scheme, but has sought to avoid scrutiny by claiming that the top floor is not a storey, to avoid triggering requirement to demonstrate that it's safe. The applicant argues that it's not a storey because the mezzanine floor is marginally less than 50% of the lower floor. However, this has been achieved by very large roof voids, which if you look at the plans, you'll see. The technical term for this is threshold abuse. If the top floor were identified as the topmost storey, the height above ground level would exceed 18 metres and would therefore require an assessment. But assessment is not just a matter of arithmetic, it's a matter of safety. Regardless of whether the uppermost floor triggers the requirement for a safety report or whether 18 metres above ground level. But this does not change the risk involved. So the question is, would it be safe? The uppermost storey is nothing but bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, to be precise. For people sleeping on that floor, it is the beginning of their escape route. You can and must still be concerned about safety of people sleeping on the top floor. And indeed, in this borough, of all places, we should be very aware about fire safety. When you make your decision, you need to be totally reassured that these flats, and particularly the top floor bedrooms, are safe. The second issue is the developers required by the London Plan guidance to incorporate a safe and dignified emergency evacuation strategy for all residents, including those who require level access and disabled people with a range of impairments. This application does not include an evacuation plan for both residents of the proposed flats and those of the flats below, as is required by both the London Plan and the building regulations. This building has many people who are elderly and a few with limited mobility. Its omission is a breach of equality duty. The applicant's daylight assessments are inadequate and omits the ones provided by Palace Place Mansions, and the residents will speak to that item. The residents, I think, are happy to answer questions about daylight and sunlight, but you also need to look at a lack of a construction traffic management plan. It doesn't apply just to basements. And the other is the loss of the lift for 1 year or more for people who are going to be in this block of flats throughout the building operation, if it were granted. So on behalf of the residents, we ask you to refuse this application or defer if you've got some unresolved concerns.
Thank you. Now we have also to hear from the applicant's agent. I've got the names Charles Rose, Matthew Crusk and Richard Sullivan. Thank you. You also have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Charles Rose from City Planning. We're the planning agents for this application. The application proposes a gambrel mansard roof extension with a slate roof and dormer windows on top of an existing flat roof mansion block in Kensington. The extension will provide 4 high-quality residential apartments that have been designed in accordance with local and London plan standards. Gambrel roofs are a common roof form in the local area and the conservation area as a whole, ensuring it will be in keeping. Officers have confirmed this. The scheme has been through 2 rounds of pre-application discussions with officers since July 2024 in order to ensure that their comments were properly taken on board and so that the material planning issues associated with these proposals could be resolved. The air rights were sold to the applicant at a time when some of the current freeholders, representing residents and leaseholders, were present in the building, so this planning application should be expected. Notwithstanding this, prior to submitting the application, the applicant also invited all residents of Palace Place Mansions and their managing agents to an exhibition on the 25th of September 2024 at the Royal Garden Hotel. The exhibition was well attended and the residents were able to provide feedback. The applicant has also created a website that contains all the documents and also allows interested parties to leave comments. The applicant's structural engineer has provided officers with calculations demonstrating that there is sufficient capacity within the building structure to accommodate the extension. It is also worth noting that prior to starting on site, building control would have to approve all structural calculations that relate to the final detailed structural design. In addition to this, party wall awards will be required, which will mean a third-party surveyor will have to check and approve all calculations before works can commence. All of the above will ensure that there are a number of technical checks and balances that will have to be met and verified by independent bodies, which will ensure no risks to the existing structure. In terms of fire safety, the proposal does not constitute a relevant building, and therefore it does not reach the criteria for planning Gateway 1. It is below 7 stories. The distance from ground level to entry level is only 14.79 metres, so it is also well below the 18-metre threshold. The galley floor is also less than 50% of the internal floor level below the galley floor. As such, it is not classified as an additional floor, but as a mezzanine. Notwithstanding this, the scheme proposes several fire safety improvements within the communal parts of the building. The application fully accords with the development plan policy and will make a small but meaningful contribution towards the local authorities' housing targets. Thank you.
That's at 3 minutes on the dot. Thank you. Questions to applicants and objectors? Councillor Denkode.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 or 3, if that's okay. Actually, I'm just going to pick you up on on your last comment, because there's a bit of a bugbear in Queensgate. There's actually a surplus of homes in Queensgate, bizarrely, which don't even sell. And they're just around the corner from you. There are homes which have been on the market forever, and because they won't sell, they take them off the market. So that's a technical issue, I suppose. I am concerned, obviously, about this, what you call the galley floor. Is it, I'm trying to work out from the floor plans here, is it actually like an open mezzanine, like some would be, or is it just, it's open? Is it to the area below it?
Yes, it's open. If you look at the appendices to the committee report,
Yeah.
There's an image that discusses galleries, and the reason why, I mean, I've got my fire safety expert here, but the reason why it's considered acceptable is because when the fire people come in at ground level or floor level, they can get the hose and control the fire in the gallery area. Is that correct, Richard?
Okay. No, I understand the point.
There's a nice
I wasn't sure if it
photo
was
in there.
enclosed or what from there. Okay, no, I understand.
Okay,
You know, having inadvertently become a bit of a fire expert, as an amateur fire expert in my role over the last few years, I do find it concerning, more concerning actually, that it is open, because the kitchen is below it, isn't it? Which is obviously, the kitchen is below and the bedroom above. And, you know, fires often start in kitchens. So all of these issues, given, you know, older people in the buildings and there's one lift, as I understand. Is there one lift or are there two lifts?
One lift.
One lift, which is a traditional. Is that being removed then? Is that being
The lift is being replaced.
replaced? Which, I don't know, it's not listed, I presume, but it's rather one of those gorgeous old lifts anyway. But there's one lift in a building, and then elderly people would have to go down the stairs. So these things I'm finding concerning. The galley floor is, as far as I can see, another floor. That's something that is bugging me at the moment.
Well,
and, you know, of all things, this committee doesn't want to be seen wriggling around fire safety. We really don't. So
Of course.
Convince me, please, that it's...
well, the first pre-app
the
we had...
technical stuff is one thing. Yeah. I want to know that people will be safe.
Well, the first pre-app we had with officers back in July, Alice was present, so she can confirm. We actually instructed your own building control department to attend that meeting. So it was the very first meeting we had with RBKC, not just with the planners, but with your building own control department. And we discussed all the issues, we agreed what we needed to do, and we moved forward on that. But we designed the scheme, first and foremost, in accordance with our own fire consultants. And then when we had the pre-app, we instructed building control from your own authority, not private building control, and that was at the request of Alice, and we had very productive discussions, and they were happy with our scheme.
Okay, so you haven't spoken to the local fire services, which are just around the corner from this building? It's where the borough commander actually has his office. So you haven't thought to discuss it with them?
We weren't invited to by officers. They didn't see the requirement.
There was no need. Okay.
Do you mind if I also step in with some details about the gallery or mezzanine? What you have described is a completely open floor. But when I look at the floor plans of the proposed upper floor, I can see an enclosed two bedrooms fully enclosed, which don't look over the void, and I can see 4 bathrooms which are fully enclosed, which don't look over the void, and then I compare it with the diagram that you've put in, which is in the addendum pack, called diagram 3.1, gallery floors. I see a very big difference between the drawing in diagram 3.1, which shows an open staircase rising up to what looks like a very simple gallery, compared with what you've drawn here, which looks like a completely different setup, where if you were standing at the bottom of those stairs, you could not see up into that area because you've got closed-off bedrooms and bathrooms. Now, we can get into what are definitions, but do you see the difference between what you have designed and the drawing which you have presented, showing a sort of an open, completely open, floating, wall-less mezzanine area?
Yes, hopefully Richard can help me explain this, but the image is taken from the guidance as a way of explaining how you calculate it. Now, I accept that some of the bedrooms aren't open, some are, some aren't, but the requirement is that the mezzanine level has to be 50% below.
Yeah, no, thank you. You've definitely said that, but the question that I'm looking at is whether this is all mezzanine or whether it's an enclosed second story with habitable accommodation with a small bit of mezzanine stuck on the end of it.
Well, it is a mezzanine floor, and some of the rooms are open and some of the rooms are closed for privacy purposes. Those with 2 bedrooms, we've had to close them because they're for privacy reasons. Richard, do you want to explain as a fire expert? Richard's worked with the fire brigade for 30 years. He's a fireman. Do you want to explain how this system works, Richard?
Yeah, and particularly where you see the definition of a gallery which has closed-off rooms in it rather than completely open, as in this diagram.
Well, I think the agreement for the gallery floors would be subject to obviously building regulations and building regulations scrutiny with the building control officer.
So thank you. Just on that, looking at the sort of the London plan, which is very much we obviously comply with, fire safety is an essential factor that must be integral to the overall layout and design, rather than one that is only considered later in the development process once fundamental decisions have been made. If the matter of fire safety is left to be considered for the first time at the building control stage, it may be too late to incorporate the necessary features or requirements into the site and or building layouts. Fire safety measures, access for emergency vehicles, equipment, etc., and to an objective's point, safe emergency evacuation provisions that are suitable for everyone need to be considered at the outset and consistently applied throughout the design, construction and ongoing management phases. One of the concerns that we have is that as the decision maker tonight, we have to be satisfied that everything has been considered at the correct stage, rather than leaving it up to, as this was saying, maybe too late if it's left.
Well, that is precisely why we had meetings with your building control department a year ago. We wanted we wanted to get their points on board. They're not objecting to this application, and the consultation responses they've given back support the scheme. They do not object to the scheme. Is that correct, Alice?
Well, you don't get to ask officers questions here. This is a conversation between us.
I'm just asking her to confirm that your building control department, who have been consulted as part of this application, that were brought on from the outset.
Yeah, no, exactly. Thank you. You said that. But what we've got to understand is what the information that's in front of us now to help us inform us of the decision. Can I also ask how confident you are on the definition of a gallery or a gallery room? Because I see you've taken the definition from a government document which says guidance. Yeah, so it's a guidance document, and it says guidance criteria for being a higher risk building during the occupation phase of the new. So, are we in the occupation phase of this development yet? Occupation phase meaning that it is built and being occupied. That's the guidance you're referring to in this handout.
But the guidance that I believe that in our handout with the frequently asked questions, the 3.1, that's taken from approved document B, which is a fire safety guidance, and it's all called guidance, prescriptive or otherwise, and it's taken from ADB, approved document B, which is building regulations guidance.
Yeah, no, thank you. One slide down, you're quoting gov.uk guidance criteria for being a higher risk building during the occupation phase. I'm just asking how confident you are that you're absolutely certain about the definition.
We're very certain about the definition. We've worked with officers on the scheme for a year, and they've asked us to clarify this ruling over the mezzanine floor. We've provided floor areas, we've provided a plan, we've provided a table that frequently asks the questions, and we've provided our answers, and we're confident that this is not a gateway scheme.
That's right.
Can I just clarify a little bit on the gallery floor?
Yeah.
Clearly, that diagram 3.1 is a schematic that as an open plan, etc., etc. Now, when you're designing gallery floors, sometimes they have enclosed parts to it. The additional fire safety provisions that we are proposing, one would be sprinkler provision throughout all of the flats. All of the cooking facilities are remote from the means of escape, or will be remote from the means of escape. We can add thermal cut-offs to the cooking facilities as well, and I believe some of the flats have got a protected means of escape coming down onto that floor where the the entrance door is, the flat entrance door is. Plus, we've got a fully L1, without getting too technical, fire alarm system throughout. So people will be more than aware if there is a fire within the kitchen area, and we've got suppression within the kitchen area as well.
Yeah, no, that's all. That's
so
all
there's
very,
a lot of provisions
very good
that
to hear.
we've added into that.
Yeah, the key question I'm working on, and hearing what the objectors have said, is on the definition of a story, and you'll be familiar that at the beginning of the guidance documents that you refer to, it says the government is currently consulting with its building safety advisors about the definition of a story, because there are a number of conflicting pieces of information in various pieces of legislation and in guidance and in building control documents. And you'll be aware of the case that they refer to exactly, which is Smoke House and Curing House, 18 Remus Road. I just wanted to read you, because this is relevant to defining a story as far as I was concerned, which is critical in this particular case, and it's very important in fire safety. So I'm sure you've looked at it, where they're looking at the definition of a story. They're saying, despite, in paragraph 62, despite section 65 of the Building Safety Act providing that the regulations could define story, there is no such definition in the regulations. Secondary legislation goes on to provide other information. And then they question, this is the first tier tribunal, they question the status of government guidance. And they said these advisory web pages have developed and evolved extensively over the previous 7 years since Grenfell. They range from simple advisory guidance to complex definitions of how to comply. And they talk about their concerns about how these all fit together. And then they say in paragraph 71, most of these definitions on use and have caveats on use and interpretation. And in the beginning of the document that you refer to, that we're looking at about the definition of story, at the end of paragraph 5 it says, and this is all in the tribunal decision, diagrams in this guidance document show examples of potential buildings and are for illustrative purposes only. You will need to consider the legislation carefully to understand whether you are responsible for a higher risk building in scope of higher risk regime. You may wish to seek legal advice on this. I know that you've said you've talked to building control. I don't have anything in the pack that I've seen which is actually a formal review from building control saying what they defined a story as. But do you have any legal advice, given that the guidance itself says that these are illustrative cases only?
We don't have any legal advice, but we discussed this matter at length with your own building control department a year ago and provided them with the necessary information for them to take a view.
Right.
They did not ask us to provide any legal advice. They just wanted justification that it was below 50%.
Yeah. And finally, because what we're all focusing on in this section is fire safety, and that's one of the things I think in the report it says that this application demonstrates the highest levels of fire safety, and what we need to make sure, and we'll discuss with officers afterwards, we're just giving you a very ample opportunity to explore the depth that you've gone into this in paragraph 75 on the tribunal, it says, one of the concerns behind the definition of story for fire safety is considerations where people might be located in the event of a fire. What they're looking at, as far as I can see, is that the driver of all of this, however people want to interpret different definitions or visuals of what might be a story, is that it's got to be safe for people. And my concern, looking at what I understood to be a gallery or a mezzanine, would be a simple interim layer which is open all around, and looking at the diagrams so that fire services could easily access people. If there is a completely enclosed set of rooms, that would seem to me more like a definition of a story with a gallery attached to the end of it, and that changes everything in terms of fire safety. I'm not saying that I have actually got to the bottom of this, and we'll try and do it with officers later, and obviously my fellow councillors can ask the questions as well. But this is not a routine case of a simple gallery floating completely observably. It looks like a story with a gallery on the end of it, just from my own view of your plans.
Well, Richard, as a practicing firefighter for 30 years, would you like to explain what the process would be?
Got it. I think I'd just like to say that throughout my career, the definition, the gallery floors have been around for a long time. The definition of a gallery floor not being a story, it's been around a long time, and it's in almost all building fire safety guidance. The latest one, BS 9991, it gives the definition of exactly the same as the ADB guide definition that you see here. In terms of the safety within a gallery floor, operationally they are quite open. They should be open, and they will be built in various. It's built in an open plan type to be seen from the floor above. Obviously, some of our is enclosed, and that's the reason why we've added sprinkler provision, fire alarms, thermal cut-offs on the cooking and things like that.
No, I thank you. And you can see our difficulty is that when a definition looks like it's completely open, but the vast majority of what is the gallery enclosed.
The argument would be had. I'm assuming the argument would be had, and the discussion would be had at building control level on what the definition is and does it comply, and that's where I think the argument would be. It's difficult to explain it to lay people, let's say.
Okay, well, we'll pick it up with officers as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got some questions. Councillor Siren, please. And then Councillor Zvidania.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some questions for the objectors. So the first question is, there seems to be a bit of a disagreement about the height of this building. Can you explain why you think that is? Because one measurement I saw was around 14 metres, and you're saying it's over 18. So just why you think that misunderstanding has happened?
Yes, explained by the applicant, they focused on the number of the stories. And the regulation says the relevant building classified A, they have 7 stories or 18 meters high. And in order to qualify for 7th floor test, they showed that according to the regulation, the mezzanine floor or gallery should be excluded. In this case, the 50% test should be passed, so that should be less than 50% than the normal floor. And this is the regulation number 6 of the guidance. But then we look at the second test, which look like the highest level. It should be 18 meters. And 18 meters, it's from the ground floor to the top floor. And the guidance number 5, which regulates the highest, set the exemptions as well as the guidance number 6. In guidance number 5, I start from number 6 for the counting the floor. It's exclude the any story which below ground level, any story which is a rooftop machinery or rooftop plant area or consists exclusively of rooftop machinery of rooftop plant rooms, and any story consisting in gallery with an internal floor area that is less than 50% of the internal floor area of the largest story vertically above or below, which is not below ground level. So as we see, there are number of exemptions, rooftop equipment and so on. But if we look at the regulation number 5, how to measure the height, it's similar approach with exclusions. But which exclusions are? These exclusions are ignoring any story which is rooftop machinery of rooftop plant area or consists exclusively of rooftop machinery or rooftop plant rooms. So this is, we see that regulation 5 and regulation 6, they exclude both.
Thank you.
The plant and the, but mezzanine floor gallery is not included. Why? Because there could be toddlers or people living in the bedrooms and they're exposed. That's why we believe that it should be extended 1 floor up and disqualified for 18 meters.
I understand. Thank you. That's very, very helpful.
Could I just go one step further? What I've tried to say is by trying to knock out that top floor to count, they've been able to reduce the height. When you look at the layout of the top floor, and I'll call it a story, there are lots of voids that have been created. In other words, it fails by 6.3 square meters to get to the 50% critical number. You just take one of these out, and it would be over 50%, and then it would be classified as a story. What's happened is a series of smoke and mirrors, if you like, to try and get below the level that they would be required to provide all this information on fire risk. We think this is 2 stories, they should be counted, and you should recognize that if they're playing around with arithmetic, they're missing the point.
Thank you. Councillor Zveniuk.
Thank you. I have a question to the applicants. Over the course of the last year, as you've been working with officers, were you at any time told that the fire safety measures that your fire safety measures were inadequate or needed to be improved in any way? And can you think now, hearing what the concerns raised by the objectors, how you might be able to improve, or can you think of any improvements to your fire safety?
Well, we had the exhibition, we had the website, and we weren't asked to improve anything. We were just asked to clarify the definitions, which we did with officers. But as part of our fire safety report, what we're going to do is do a review of the communal parts. So we believe that there might be some areas of the communal parts that are not fire safety. Now, for example, the signage that's not available, some of the communal fire doors might not meet the regulations. So we've committed to doing a full review of the existing building to make sure that we're bringing it up to fire safety standards. So improving ventilation, making sure that the fire doors and the communal parts are acceptable, making sure that the lighting is appropriate, making sure that the signage that people can at the moment, if you go around the building, my understanding is there's no signage, so you don't know where you're going if there's too much smoke in the building. So we'll be looking to make all these improvements and hopefully improve the fire safety of the building as part of this application, as well as the various fire safety methods that Richard discussed in the building, such as sprinklers and things like that. So we're doing our very best, and it was at the forefront of our mind when we designed the scheme and when we met with the council over a year ago. We want to make sure that we address this issue full on. We felt that we've done that. Thank you.
So thank you. And when you were asked to clarify, that was in the context of fire safety. It wasn't a sort of, as in, was this in the context of a discussion about fire safety?
Completely, yes, yes.
Okay, thank
you. So we were asked to clarify definitions, and we produced the Q&A report. We produced the all the calculations. We produced and we did this in accordance with questions from your building department as well. So.
And the improvements that you've just spoken of, is that under, forgive me, is that an existing condition that you're going to undertake this review? Or?
It's in our fire safety statement, and we produced that statement right from the outset of the project. So as part of the pre-app, so we could engage with officers and make sure we get this right. But we're hoping to introduce quite a few improvements to the building to make it as safe as possible. It's obviously quite an old building, and it wasn't built under today's building control standards. So there are improvements that can be made, which we've committed to do. And Richard, do you want to?
I'd just like to say we went to some pre-planning meetings with the borough, and we produced under the London plan, as you know, 12A, because it's considered a minor development. We produced a planning fire strategy. Have you seen that? Are you?
I don't think I've seen it. No.
It's part of the document, and it's quite a comprehensive plan. And it discusses various aspects of it, and it's part of obviously that you're not privy to it, and it lays down various solutions to various problems, and it obviously gives the upgrading that we would do of the common areas, and it also regards to the evacuation plan, which I think was mentioned. Over there about the robust evacuation plan. That is in the planning fire strategy document as well. And we got a report that we've done, and that's been discussed with the building control.
Question, because obviously there are other buildings in the area that have a double mansard, and I assume are a similar height. Do they have a similar? Perhaps you don't know this, but do they have a similar fire safety strategy that you have for this building, or is that not something you're aware of? Well,
they would have been built at different times, so they wouldn't meet today. Well, they might not necessarily meet today's standards. When we build this mansard, it has to meet building control standards of the day. A lot of these mansards were built many years ago, so they wouldn't necessarily meet or accord with standards.
Do you mind if I just jump in on two more specific things? You mentioned you've done a fire strategy, but you keep referring to the evacuation from these apartments, which have got accommodation, 20 people accommodation for sleeping, etc. Does the fire strategy that you've done also cover the impact of the additional 20 people using the communal stair to exit, or is it just the building itself?
It does. Yes, it does entirely, and that's why we've suggested improvements to the existing areas, the common areas of the existing.
Yeah, I mean those will be required anyway, whether the mansard went ahead or not.
Yeah.
Okay, just on one other topic, just going to things. If this proceeds to be granted today, one of the issues also that looks like, and it was mentioned by objectors, is the difficulty in building this in terms of construction traffic management. There isn't really a road outside, it's a pavement, and there's quite a lot of material coming in and out. Are you, if we go ahead and make a decision to grant, would you be content with a condition requiring a CTMP to be as a pre-commencement condition?
We're very conscious of residents' concerns regarding this issue, and we're committed to preparing a detailed and thorough management and construction logistics plan that considers all their issues. As part of that process, we would like to engage with local residents to understand their issues and how best we can meet their needs. And then we would prepare a detailed construction management plan, and we'd be more than happy for that management plan to come back to you in order for you to review it personally and you to decide upon it. It's something we take very seriously.
Yeah, thank you. That's good to hear. And I think it was also in your transport statement, and also it was in one of your pre-apps where you put a draft in for it. It's just doesn't seem to be a condition in this final set of things. Yeah,
we're more than happy.
Yeah. One other, and we'll come to Emma Denko in a minute. just while we're on this, one of the concerns we also heard was that whether the amount of accommodation and structure could be borne by the existing building, which wasn't obviously designed with having that. I know that I think you mentioned in your comments at the beginning that you would obviously work through this with building control, and obviously that would also be something that we might be interested in seeing as a pre-commencement condition that an engineer would say. With basements, obviously, that is always a condition to see if it can be safely built. With 2 stories or a story plus a mezzanine, however defined, there's still a lot of structure going on to this building, and there's no engineering evidence so far. You might be confident, but we haven't seen any that the building can safely take it. We wouldn't expect you necessarily to do it for an application, because you want to know things are going ahead before moving on to the engineering stage. Is that something that you've either considered or you'd be happy to have as a pre-commencement?
It was a question that officers asked us as part of this process. We have provided them with initial calculations that demonstrate that the structure is capable of housing additional stories, and officers were, as far as I'm aware, satisfied with those calculations. We're more than happy to accept a condition that requires us to produce the necessary structural information for you to be satisfied that this building can be built, this extension can be built safely. So in answer to your question, yes.
No, that's, I appreciate that. That's very kind. I know there's been a lot of questions to you, and it's very helpful to get the clarifications. I think Councillor Dentcode wanted to come back.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got 2, if I may. One of them was, given the size of the current lift now and the construction materials going up and down, I don't know if it would be possible to have an external lift, so all the materials could go up and down in an external lift, rather than taking over the inside of the building.
They'd be going up the scaffolding via the side of the building. They wouldn't be entering the building.
Okay, no, that's helpful, thank you. I wanted to ask, if I may, there's something that we haven't even talked about. This is a very special part of Kensington. If I could ask Michael Bach about the overdevelopment, the shape of the structure proposed on top of this building in this rather gorgeous part of Kensington, with its traditional mansion blocks. But could you like to talk us through that, or maybe one of your neighbours would, or one of your colleagues would hear? Particularly on the design front?
I don't think there's much to say in that, because I think the slope of the mansard will not make it overbearing in the immediate area, and it's difficult to get long views. My colleagues will probably have a much better idea since they live there, if I can pass it on.
Okay.
Technically, when we discuss the height of the building, technically, when we discussed the height of the building, it was stated the heights from the ground floor to the roof, it's 14 meters. And the proposed structure, it goes, according to the comments from the planning officer, up to another 7-something meters. So if we divide this 14 by 2, so we extend the building by 50% technically. So, okay, it was nice drawing, but once again, we find out when discuss the plans, it's something for review only. So 7 meters high, it can be significant, and we don't sure that visually it would be so nice. So maybe it would be somehow destructive.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I think we move to questions to officers now. Who would like to go? Councillor Siren.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is about the pre-app advice, which is included in our pack. And there's quite a lot of comments from the officer about double-storey mansard would not be acceptable. Contemporary proposal will be out of context and character with the area. Of the 3 options submitted, the single-storey mansard is considered the only appropriate response. What changes to the application were made as a result of this pre-app advice?
Thank you, Councillor. So, as the applicant team suggested, there was 2 rounds of pre-application advice prior to the submission of this application. I was the case officer for the first round of pre-application advice, and then another officer was the case officer for that scheme. In terms of the first proposal, there were different options provided, but I believe that from my memory, we were relatively supportive of the scheme in its form, subject to some minor changes in terms of the fenestration. So I guess the main changes have probably been kind of those finer details in terms of the dormer windows, the materials, and how the windows fit with the fenestration within the existing building. I know the applicants did provide a design and access statement, and that talks through the main changes within the pre-application submission. All I would suggest is that we are considering the proposal in front of us this evening, which we need to make an assessment on in terms of its merits and whether it's acceptable.
Okay, until someone else wants to. I just wanted to pick up with officers on design, since that's come up. When I read through the report in front of us, there are some things that look to me as though it's worth questioning in terms of scale and mass. And this is a prominent building. If you look, I mean, the clues in the name of the building in terms of palace and mansions. If you're looking up the road to the natural exit of Kensington Court, this is the building which catches your eye. It's at the highest point, and this would be adding significant height. One of the points it's talked about in 6.32 is the 75 degree second slope, which is counted as atypical. If you look at most of the rest of Kensington Court, the slope is more gentle, so there's much less height that's being added. So nowhere else has a 75. There's a discussion about in 6.26 it being considered to be contemporary, and this is in order so that it reads as if it isn't part of the existing building. And that to me, and I'll put this to officers in one go, but that to me is a question about whether you're taking something which is very sort of prominent and elegant and traditional, and adding a contemporary, substantial contemporary building on top of it, and that questions whether it's sympathetic or not. There's a question, I think, in the report at 6.35 which talks about front dormers, and they're too large. I think that got mentioned in the pre-app, and it wasn't clear that that was fully followed through. In 6.38 it talks about dark coloured crittle metal windows, and I had a look around Kensington Court, and every other mansard fenestration is white painted timber. So again, it doesn't look like it's typical. I think in 6.40 it talks about aluminium as the cladding material, whereas traditionally it would be lead. And taken together, question to officers, I can't look at you because I'm talking into a microphone, but I would normally look at you to ask this. Are these, are we as the decision makers tonight, how are we to judge those features in the context of a conservation area and quite a prominent building?
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of its impact to the character and the conservation area and its design features, that, as you've mentioned, it has been picked up at length within the officer's report in section 6.7 onwards. As officers, we did work with the applicant team within the pre-applications to agree or to discuss kind of the overall form and the approach, and the more modern approach was supported, and I think you've mentioned it about it appearing contrasting to the existing traditional building. In terms of the overall form and the angles that you've mentioned, we don't have a specific policy or any current guidance which suggests what would be an appropriate slope or an appropriate angle for a mansard. I think previously there used to be a kind of a guidance document for mansards where we used to encourage an angle of 72, and this obviously does go beyond that. I think what members need to do is obviously review the design, review the proposed mansards in its context and in its setting, and whether you think there is going to be any harm to the surrounding townscape. Officers have obviously gone through that assessment and found that the overall appearance, the overall design is acceptable. I think the officer does reference that the size of the dormer windows could be smaller, but I think when considering the scheme as a whole, it wouldn't warrant, or it wouldn't have such harm to warrant refusal based on that. I would just draw, sorry, just finally, just to draw on the conditions. I know you've mentioned that aluminium wouldn't be suitable. We have got that recommended condition in the addendum report, so it doesn't use aluminium, and we've got the recommended informative to suggest that it needs to be something more traditional and respect the historic building, so that might overcome that concern in terms of the material.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of them. Did I read, maybe it didn't make it through to this application, but it was certainly referred to in one of the pre-apps, talking about at the rear there are metal railings, but the front-facing balconies would have glass balustrades.
I think that's correct. So, as shown within my presentation earlier, the back terraces or amenity spaces will be marked by those metal railings. At the front, if members aren't satisfied with the use of glass balustrades, you could condition or amend recommended condition 3, I believe, for the submission of those details. And you could say that you expect them to be metal, to be more traditional and in keeping.
Thank you. I mean, one of my concerns is that we don't want to redesign the entire building in terms of colour of windows, size of windows, cladding materials around the dormers, the materials for the balustrades, basically changing the appearance from contemporary to traditional. That's a big ask to take through conditions and advisories, and it's not the scheme that's in front of us now. So that's that part. There was one mention of living conditions. We haven't discussed it, but we can't discuss everything with the applicant. But some comments are that not all of the windows in surrounding buildings and in the building itself were surveyed for BRE, and whether the daylight, sunlight, vertical sky, etc., whether the right number of windows met the usual limits for considering whether harm would be created by the additional mass of the building.
Thank you, Chairman. So the application was supported by a daylight and sunlight report. You're correct that the report didn't undertake an assessment on the existing light well, and that's set out within paragraph 6.46 of the officer's report. That assessment was covered within the design and access statement or within a supporting statement, and the officers have taken the opinion that those existing windows that are within the light well are likely or will be secondary windows due to their location. They're not expected to have a good level or a high level of light, and therefore we've come to the conclusion that any impact to them would be acceptable. Obviously, a daylight and sunlight report is helpful and it is a technical report, but there isn't a policy requirement. So the policy that members would be looking at is policy CD9, which relates to living conditions, and you do need to look at kind of the living conditions of those residential properties as a whole as well.
Thank you. Questions from other councillors? Okay, so just to sum up where we are, Councillor Siren. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably appropriate to ask the officer about your opinion on the discussion that we had about fire safety and this question about the height of the building and whether the additional storey with all of the bedrooms should count as an extra storey for fire safety. What is your conclusion given the discussion you had?
Thank you, Councillor. So, as suggested this evening, officers did have pre-application engagement with the applicant team, and that did include a conversation and a meeting with the Council's building control officers. As officers, we have used our planning judgment, and we don't consider that the scheme meets the relevant building. That's set out within the officer report under section 6.59. So officers are satisfied that the mezzanine level is a mezzanine for the basis of the assessment, and that it wouldn't meet that 50% trigger, and therefore we've taken the height from the pavement level to the finished floor level of the story, which is the 14.7 metres, I think that's been referred to. So we have had conversations with the applicant team, with building control, and it is something that has been considered early on and was discussed in that first pre-application meeting that I had with the applicant team myself. So as an officer, we are satisfied that they have achieved or demonstrated that they can achieve the highest standards. That's not to say that when they do get to, if they get to building control stage, they will obviously then need to comply with the latest and current building control regulations as well.
Councillor Fenley.
Is it the case, as suggested by the applicants, that the fire safety measures will be improved in the building compared to the current fire safety measures in the building?
So it does state within their supporting fire safety strategy that there will be chances to upgrade the existing building. Obviously, we haven't gone so far into kind of review the existing signage, the existing fire evacuation of the existing, so that they have suggested that they will do it, but it doesn't form. I would recommend doesn't form part of the proposal before members this evening in terms of the built form, the built development, and how far that would be controlled by a condition or anything like that. But it is set out within their submitted fire statement.
If this application were to be approved, would you suggest adding a condition that would involve improving or undertaking a review into the fire safety arrangements, making improvements? I think considering on so many counts the sort of the application only just falls short of the threshold, that it might be worth paying extra attention to the fire safety arrangements.
So in terms of a planning condition, it would need to meet the 6 tests. I would recommend that a condition to require the applicant to upgrade the existing fire safety within the remainder of the building may not meet those tests. It may not be reasonable and it may not be directly related or within the scope of this application. So I'd recommend that a condition probably wouldn't meet those tests. You could add an informative to suggest that the applicant, or you would encourage the applicant to review any enhancements or any improvements that they can make to the overall fire safety of the building. But that would be my initial reaction.
And I just comment, those fire safety measures for the existing building are required anyway, irrespective of any new development. Right, where are we? Because we've done our hour in detail on this. Councillor Denko.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really struggling. I remain unconvinced with some of these issues that we've heard that we talked about a year ago or whatever. It's I'm not feeling confident about the whole jiggery-pokery with the gallery mezzanine and the height. And the design, of course, and the massing and so on, which is another issue altogether. The thing which is really, I think I'm struggling on at least, is this issue about the narrative we're getting about these new homes and whether or not they're safe, and on the fire safety issues. I'm unconvinced.
Thank you. And look, I think it from my point of view, and we've all sat on this committee for quite a long time, I don't think we've ever seen, well, I have not seen something that looks, this looks like a story from a number of people who will be living and sleeping up there behind fully enclosed walls, and that looks far from the definition, to me, to the extent that any definition exists, of a gallery, because the diagrams and the definitions seem to revolve around the ability for it to be safe because it's easy to see through it and access it and get out of it. And we have to take that very seriously. And it looks like it's not. It's just we don't have the information in front of us, is what I would say, to be able to judge correctly whether with all the correct opinions. A conversation a year ago with a building control is not the same as a building control company signing off on the absolute design. So that's a concern. We've also had some concern over the modern nature of the top floor and various material choices, glass and aluminium, etc., which it's difficult to redesign a whole scheme sitting here this evening and just conditioning everything. The application is as in front of us. I mean, I'd like to, unless anyone's got any more questions, I'd like to, if people can indicate where they think we are, and I can move to a vote. Councillor Siren?
I think I'm very much with Councillor Dent-Coad on this. I feel uncomfortable about it, and I think it's the definition of the tall building and some of the exclusions that we heard, and I just don't think it's in line with the intent of these policies that are there to keep people safe, having a whole story of bedrooms. I mean, we've heard about exclusions to do with plant and all sorts of other things. I feel very uncomfortable with it. I also think on the design, particularly looking at some of the pre-app advice, although obviously we're here to make a decision on the application, there's definitely been feedback that this is not, this is not subordinate to the building, and I think it is a beautiful building, and I think we should be looking to protect it. So the design of it does also concern me.
Thank you very much. Okay, look, let's the officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour of the application? Right. Okay. Officers, we'll have a proposal to refuse coming up, it looks like. Have you made notes?
Yes, extensive notes. I think there's definitely two reasons for refusal that you've all identified. So one relating to the design, the pitch and the materiality, the dormers, all of those things we can capture, and the impact that has on the original building and the wider area, and i.e. it doesn't preserve or enhance the conservation area, and that the public benefits, the 4 new homes, don't outweigh that. And then the second reason, I think we need to say that the site contains a relevant building. I feel like that's the assessment you've clearly made. And the mezzanine level contains enclosed rooms, and as a result, the applicant has failed to demonstrate the highest standards of fire safety. And we can conclude that fully for you. So they're the two I've identified. If you want any others considered, I can help.
Yes, Councillor Tyron.
Well, I guess there's a conversation to be had about 6.46 in the report about impact on, well, the BRE guidelines and the impact on living conditions. And, I do appreciate that the windows that were in the light well weren't assessed, but I think just to say, well, they're not important, I think that's probably not fair on the people living in those rooms, and I think a proper assessment needs to be made.
So impact on amenity of residents. I think I'm generally seeing nods on that. Okay, so we need a proposer for a motion to refuse. Councillor Siren and seconded Councillor Dent-Coad. Okay, so now if officers are ready, we'll move to the vote. The proposal. The motion is to refuse this application for the reasons set out by officers in summary of our conversation. Can I see those voting to refuse? So that is we're agreeing with the motion to refuse. So the motion to grant, motion to refuse is accepted by us, if that's clear. So the application is refused. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. That took quite a bit of time, but there was a lot of detail to explore. Are we fine to go on to 17 Southend Committee? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I would draw members' attention again to the addendum report. There's just a correction to paragraph 6.11. The application before members this evening relates to number 17 South End. That can be seen identified by the red arrow on the slide before you. This application is retrospective. The applicant seeks retrospective planning permission for the replacement of the garage doors at ground floor level and the replacement of the first floor windows on the front elevation. The front elevation pre-existing, so prior to the development commencing, can be seen on this slide. And the front elevation as existing, so as seeking approval under this application, can be seen on this slide. The garage doors at ground floor level are timber, painted, and the windows at the first floor level are metal. Just to go through the previous garage doors and the proposal as part of this application, members can see the previous steel roller shutter doors on the top-hand image. These have been replaced by these new garage doors on the bottom image, which are timber and then painted. And then in relation to the first floor windows, members can note the previous first floor windows or the pre-existing first floor windows on the upper image. They have been replaced with the current windows as seen on the image below, and they are metal. And then just to show a officer photograph of the front elevation of the building, and members can note the setback of the first floor level. Officers are recommending approval, so to grant planning permission subject to the conditions. As it's a retrospective condition, there is no time limit condition. The only condition recommended is the compliance with the approved drawings. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Mrs. Lyle Mannering. Would like to have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an extraordinary application being dealt with in a very odd way. If one looks at the report, it would seem simple, yet took 18 weeks from lodging to get here. You are being invited to approve this application, which deals with unauthorised cosmetic changes, but does not deal with the unauthorised change of use for which these changes were made. The report says these will be dealt with separately by enforcement. As Mr. Bark first reported this on the 1st of December 2024, and the enforcement officer waited until 6th of March 25 to say he would consider the matter once this application had been decided, but the application itself does not deal with change of use. This seems unusually topsy-turvy, even for planning applications. The change of use is that both garages have been converted to living quarters, and what was a simple 1881 building, noted as making a positive contribution to the conservation area, consisting of 2 garages with a flat above, has been turned into a garage-less house, all without permission. So as an initial submission, I would ask you to refuse the application and require the enforcement officer to actually do his job. Turning to the cosmetic matters, which is all you are being asked to deal with, the windows. The planning report is schizophrenic on this. It says at 6.7, metal windows would be fine, not incongruous, as there is a varying character within the mews, but says at 6.11, the proposed timber framing of the windows would also preserve the character and appearance of the wider construction area. That an addendum report seeks to delete that sentence does not take away that that is the standard general position in K&C. Over the most recent years, there have been planning permissions for 16, 17 itself, 18 and 19 South End. All require that sash windows in painted timber, external windows permitted shall be timber framed and painted with the windows slimline, double glazed, double hung, white painted sliding sashes and so maintained to preserve the appearance of the building and the character of the area in accordance with policies of the development plan, in particular policies CL1 and CL2 of the Consolidated Local Plan. That is consistent with the older 15 and 20 South End, which are bookending these 4 comparatively new houses, which were and are timber framed. So the whole north side was timber until now. The metal windows are ugly and cheap, with fake glazing bars, not sash, not timber, not double hung, and should be replaced as above in accordance with CL1 and CL2. The garage doors. They're no longer garage doors and do not look as if they open at all. The report is correct that aesthetically the new doors are an improvement on the doors they replace. What it ignores is that they are incorrectly placed, probably to give more room to the new living quarters behind. That is clearly shown in the application itself. See the photos on page 5 of the application's conservation area appraisal, and you have seen those up on the screen, where you can see the old doors are recessed in line with the front door, some 220 millimeters, whereas the new are recessed 20 millimeters. Doors would be fine if they were recessed and hung further back. I ask you to refuse this application, both because it fails to deal with the main issue of change of use, and the cosmetic changes have been badly done and not in accordance with the consolidated local plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? I've got one question. I think what you've said is amazingly clear, and therefore that means you usually don't have questions. And thanks for pointing out the change in setback. Do you have? And we'll talk to officers immediately after this. But do you have any knowledge or evidence of the change of use, or is it something that is just likely because of the change in the doors?
Oh no, it's absolutely clear. The workers who were doing it told us that it was the two garages were being replaced to a bedroom and a sitting room, and the enforcement officer told me that he couldn't get access, and somebody has already moved into that. In fact, the owner, who owns, let me get this right, 17 Kensington Square, thank you, and 17 Southend, has moved into 17 Southend and let 17 Kensington Square. So, yes, I'm absolutely sure of this.
Thank you. Okay, questions to officers? Can I just bounce straight back on this one, which is, have enforcement visited and have officers visited as well on the use question? And let's pick that one up first, and then we'll just do the materials and positioning of the replaced items.
Thank you, Councillor. So I can confirm that the planning officer has visited the site, and so has the enforcement officer, as mentioned this evening. Both the planning officer and I believe the enforcement officer weren't given access internally into the property. All I would raise with members this evening is that the application before you is for those external changes. I have had a look at any previous restrictive planning conditions on this property or any Article 4 directions which may restrict or preclude any change of use of the garage. I can't see anything from an initial search. So usually it would be that if there is a change of use, as long as it's ancillary and it's residential, it wouldn't necessarily require planning permission. But again, I would caveat that in the future, if it was found that planning permission was required and there is a material change of use, then any appropriate enforcement action could be taken. But yeah, in summary, we weren't granted access. But in any case, this application is just for the external changes.
Thank you. But if members wanted to, we could ask for enforcement action against change of use as a note to officers or an informative in some way.
I could raise it with the enforcement officer. I think they have already reviewed it, but I could ask them to look into the specific question in the change of use and whether a breach of planning control has occurred.
Thank you.
May I say one?
I'm sorry for this. You know, well,
yes.
Would you mind just switching your microphone off so that we can? Thank you very much. But thank you, Councillor Denkode.
Chair, I was going to ask probably what you're about to ask about the materials used in the window frames. So are they actually UPVC, or are they that wood composite that looks exactly like wood PVC? It looks like UPVC, sorry, because there is a marked difference in how they age and everything and how they look. That's something that I think we should look into, because they do look very, very different and unworthy but sometimes the wood composite does look like UPVC. I think we need to know that. Do we have any insight on that?
So the previous windows were timber framed. The new windows are aluminium, so they are a different material, but they're not UPVC. Officers have taken the view that the change in material, the change in kind of the overall form, finish, glazing bars would have an acceptable impact on the overall appearance of the building. I would also just note that the change of those garage doors is also an enhancement to the existing building as well. So officers are of the opinion that there is no harm caused by the change of those windows, and therefore it's acceptable and complies with the relevant policies.
Councillor Siren.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to push you a little bit on this whole window conversation, because, you know, we heard from the objector about the timber, the sash windows. I mean, these are a feature of this particular road and the area. And I struggle to see how, if somebody puts in a planning application for aluminium windows at first floor, clearly visible from the street, that we would actually allow it. I've just never seen anything like that in this kind of area where everything is timber and sash. So, I don't know, have you got any comment on that?
I think what I would add to my previous answer is that the first floor is set back, so it is set back from the front elevation. And from looking at the properties on Southend or that form that terrace grouping, they are quite varied and mixed.
But they're all wood. They're all wood.
You are correct that the traditional material, the material most commonly found in the area, is timber. Officers have had to make an assessment as to if there is harm or what level of harm there is from the aluminium, and we've come to the opinion that there is no harm. If members were to consider otherwise, then you would need to demonstrate what that level of harm was, if it's outweighed by any of the public benefits, and if it's not, then that may form a reason for refusal.
Well, I'm not sure what the public benefits would be, and you know, in a conservation area which talks about timber and sash windows, I'm not sure why we would want to set a precedent like this. And I was also quite... I know enforcement is separate, not the conversation that we're having here, but I'm kind of a little bit disturbed that because somebody said you're not allowed in, we've sort of just let it just be okay, because, yeah, somebody needs to go there and see what's happening behind these closed doors. The garage doors are an improvement. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I'm really concerned about the first floor, and I don't think we should be allowing this sort of thing.
Thank you. Shall we indicate move to vote and then see where this goes? Officer recommendation is to grant, and noting that obviously we can add a note to officers that enforcement should be looked at. It should be required to look into any evidence of change of use and get access to see that. But for what's in front of us now, can I see those in favour of granting? Right, so we've got quite the process. Have you noted down the reasons that we've set out, and its material, its impact on conservation area, its all other windows are timber as these were before. The garage doors we're not commenting on, I think, but we're just saying the harm is to the at the first floor level, the change in material, and actually the style of it as well, with the stick-on glazing bars, I think we heard, which looks like it to me, and they seem to be a very flat profile of window. Any other reason from anyone? No, okay. So with those in mind, can we have someone to propose a recommendation to refuse? Councillor Dent-Code, and second, Councillor Siren. Okay, so the vote now is to agree with the recommendation to refuse planning condition for the reason set out. Those in favour of the vote. So that is refused, see, by everyone. And we'd also like to add whether it's an informative or a note with no informative, there's no conditions, but a note to officers to require enforcement to take actions to investigate and deal with the unauthorised change of use and decide whether that requires a planning consent. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, thank you. Item 6 only, after all this, Westbourne Grove.
Thank you, Chairman. I would draw members' attention again to the addendum report. There's an amendment to the reason for condition 15, an amendment to paragraph 6.9 to refer to policy GB14 rather than GB15. So the application before members this evening relates to the basement and ground floor unit at 202 to 204 Westbourne Grove. The application building can be seen on this slide, identified by the red arrow. So the proposal before members this evening seeks a variation to a number of conditions that were previously attached to an earlier planning permission granted in 2022. So that application granted various alterations, including the construction of a rear conservatory. The rear conservatory I've just indicated by the red arrow on the slide before members. That application was granted subject to various conditions. Some of those conditions were prior to the commencement of development. This application has been submitted part retrospectively, and I believe the conservatory has been built out. So the purpose of this application is to vary the wording of some of those conditions so that they're lawful. So part of the condition seeking to be varied, and that's just varying the triggers and officers reviewing the information, is condition 5, which relates to the acoustic report, condition 10, which relates to the code of construction, and then condition 13 and 14, which relates to a tree survey, protection and landscaping, and also condition 15, sorry. So I've just put on the slide a snippet from the proposed ground floor plan, which shows some of the planting at the rear, and then the image on the right is just taken from the proposed landscaping plan again, of the types of some of the types of shrubs and flowers, etc., to be used in the overall scheme. And then this photo, or this image, sorry, I've just taken from the submitted noise report. This shows the location of the conservatory and the relationship with the restaurant and the nearest neighbouring properties. Officers are looking to recommend approval, so to grant the application in line with the variations to those conditions mentioned. That concludes my presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Fiona Fleming-Brown, please, 3 minutes.
I'm the chair of the Pembridge Association, and our objections were focused on the proposed changes creating noise and nuisance to residents of the Pembridge Conservation Area and the Colville Conservation Area, especially those residents living in Westbourne Grove and Lonsdale Road. 202 and 204 Westbourne Grove is a very acoustically sensitive site, with residential neighbours living above, to either side, and closely opposite this lively 7-day-a-week restaurant bar. We were concerned by the opening of the conservatory windows at night, the original lack of acoustic report, and the need for acoustic testing after the changes were made, because obviously a report has predictive results, not actual results, the desire to protect the current hours of garden use, and we also wanted to see more robust landscaping and specifically seasonal pollinating plants. We were therefore very pleased that the officer's report has proposed a series of conditions which meet all of our objections. So if the applicant accepts these conditions, then we would have no further objection. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the applicant, or Mr. El-Kadi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mo, and I'm here on behalf of Wild Notting Hill. This application seeks to vary the trigger wording of some of the originally attached pre-commencement conditions, which have not been met prior to the implementation of the original permission. The proposals also seek to address the requirements of these particular conditions in this way, mitigate against the breach of planning control. The proposed development, we ensure that the existing trees of amenity value will be safeguarded, and also that development would preserve the character and appearance of the Pembridge conservation area. In addition, the proposals would safeguard the living conditions of the occupiers of nearby properties. What I would like to emphasize on is that since being and operating in Notting Hill for the last 2 years, we've made it our aim to make sure our neighbours' concerns are addressed, and we've made it that we have a good cooperation with our neighbours. So we're a neighbourhood restaurant. We value our neighbours, whether they come and dine in our restaurant or whether they live amongst us and near us. So this is our application, and hope that we get granted today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Dencode and then Councillor Zvedoniuk.
Thank you. Mr. Al-Qadi, so you were speaking very quickly and I wasn't clear, sorry. I know you had to go through a lot in 3 minutes. If you had accepted all the comments that Mrs. Fleming-Brown had asked you for, she said, if all these conditions are accepted, that they have no further complaints. Is that what you were saying? Because I didn't quite keep up with what you were saying.
Sorry for speaking too fast. What I was saying is that we always value our neighbours. We try and have a cooperating with them. We try to sort of, as much as we can, make sure that what they ask, we do. So in terms of closing the windows, because I think there was one comment about closing the windows, we were allowed to keep the windows open until 9, and then we've agreed to close it until 7. So that is one example of how we want to have a good relationship with our neighbours and make sure that we're not harming them in any way and mitigate from harming any kind of our neighbours in that sense.
I understand that. So I think there are specific conditions that you were being asked. Are you agreeing those?
Yes, I think I deferred for the conditions to the officer because I'm not really sort of experienced in that sense. I'm just here to represent, tell us what the restaurant is about and how we value our neighbours in that sense. But I defer to the officer in that sense just to discuss the conditions.
Okay. Can I go back to Mrs. Fleming-Brown?
Yep, go ahead.
Are you content with this response?
Yes, the officer's report proposes a set of quite robust conditions which met all our obligations, and we've discussed them with the officer in detail, and we are completely happy if the applicant is prepared to accept these conditions for the application to be consented.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, yep. Thank you. We move to questions to officers. Councillor Zvedoniuk.
So just to clarify, the list of conditions set out by the objector, is that in the application? Is that what we're agreeing to today? No.
It's the conditions in the RBKC officer's report which recommends the acceptance of this application. They've submitted a series of proposed conditions.
Right. So, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So I think.
So are you aware of what the So are you aware of the conditions requested by Mrs. Fleming-Brown?
So I think that where this list of conditions may come from is that when the application was submitted to the local planning authority, the covering letter or the supporting letter suggested the wording of the revised conditions for those conditions which are seeking to be varied, so conditions 5, 10, 13, 14 and 15. Within our assessment, we have tweaked the previous conditions which were previously included within the decision notice to make reference to the details provided within this application. So, for example, condition 5, which is the acoustic report, previously required a acoustic report to be provided. That's been provided as part of this application. We've assessed it with our environmental health officers. We're satisfied with it. We are reattaching or recommending that we reattach a condition 5, which still revolves the acoustic report, and it does require the rear conservatory to be fitted with the proposed measures as set out within the report. So I would just draw members' attention to section 9 of your report, which is the recommended conditions, and they're the conditions that we're recommending being approved. That does include the conditions which restrict the use of the garden, which restrict the music as well, and the conservatory windows to be kept closed. So they're all recommended again, similar to the previous one.
So it seems like there's a good sense of solving the previously not submitted materials for the conditions to be discharged. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. That is granted. 21 Victoria Gardens.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks planning permission for the creation of a roof terrace. Officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out within the officer's report. There's no speakers on this item, therefore I don't have a presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions from me. Councillors? No questions from councillors. Okay, prepared to move for a vote. Recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. 21 Victoria Gardens is granted. 8 Queensdale Walk, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, no speakers registered on this application, so I don't have a formal presentation to go through. The application relates to 8 Queensdale Walk. It seeks planning permission for the installation of an air source heat pump in the rear garden. Officers are recommending to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Simon.
I'm sorry to ask this question, but given the earlier question that I asked about the heat pump, and we had a listed building there, and we don't have a listed building here, so does it need planning permission?
Thank you. I think it does because it's an air conditioning unit rather than an air source heat pump. I would just draw your attention to the recommended conditions. So we've got the condition 3, which is our kind of standard condition to control the noise. Condition 4 about the mounts as well. We have also got a additional condition, condition 5, which is the nighttime restrictions as well, to ensure that it's operated, I think, on a lower mode or a nighttime mode during those hours as well.
So just so that we sort of understand this, because this is one of those, it does hot and cold, that's why it needs planning permission. Is that why?
And also just to add, there's a distance to the boundary requirement. So there has to be, I believe, a minimum, I haven't checked the regs fully for the purposes of this meeting, but a minimum of 1 metre to the boundary. So it's too close to the neighbour as well.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be PD for that reason too.
So, and that's why it needs the acoustic report, because it's so close to the neighbour?
Yes, yeah. So if you're set 1 metre off the boundary and meet all the other requirements, it may well be permitted development.
Thank
so
you.
it's good
Thank
we have
it's really
extra
helpful.
controls.
Very good. Any other questions? If not, happy to move to a vote. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see who's in favour? Thank you. That is granted. Now moving to the South Pack, 9, Feeney Arms.
Thank you, Chairman. So the application before members this evening seeks to replace the existing timber shed with a metal-clad insulated unit. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions set out within the officer report. That concludes my presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. May I have a question, which is, it looks like there's some sort of exit there. I'm just checking that what would go in there is not going to form an obstruction to some sort of fire exit, if there is one, or secondary means of escape.
Thank you, Chairman. We did discuss this, or my colleague did discuss this with the applicant team. That isn't, or they haven't suggested that's an existing means of escape. They have provided the fire details required by policy CD16, suggesting that there is going to be no changes to the existing fire escape routes. And again, that's been confirmed with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. I did have a look from the street at it because I just happened to be passing, and I saw that it's invisible from the street, and actually there's no windows from the neighbouring house which look over it. So it's hard to see what the harm would be, unless it being metal, it would create a lot of noise when rain falls on it. I don't know whether officers have a comment on that.
So we're satisfied with the overall appearance of the building and the materials. There is condition 3, which is for the submission of details, and that does include the materials to be used on the external faces of the building. If members found it to be necessary, we could amend that condition 3 to include the roof. I don't believe that officers are concerned in terms of any noise emissions of the roof covering material, but if members are of a different opinion, we could amend that condition.
Fair enough. Councillor Zidoniou.
Just to note that there are 11 objections, and it's a really small street, Feeney Street. So what engagement has been done with local residents? Because I think they're obviously all very concerned, possibly about the noise implications.
So the planning application should have been supported by a statement of community involvement, which would detail the engagement that the applicant had prior to the application being submitted to the local planning authority. As the local planning authority, we are statutorily required to notify those directly adjacent. So we've done that, and that's where we've received the 11 letters. I'm not aware myself exactly what engagement was carried out before, or the documents or the details within their statement of community involvement. But obviously, as officers, we do encourage that early engagement. Sorry.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, do people feel they got the information to move to a vote on this? Yeah, okay. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Those against? Okay, so that is granted with one vote against. Next case, 106 Cheney Walk, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just draw members' attention to the addendum report for this one, and I would just give a verbal addition to the addendum report on the correction to recommended condition 12, I believe. The condition 12 currently refers to planning permission, where it should refer to advertisement consent. The application before members this evening is an advertisement consent application for the replacement of two existing LED digital displays with a smaller internally illuminated LED digital display and the addition of a living wall. Officers have reviewed and are recommending that advertisement consent is granted, subject to those conditions, noting the change to condition 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Zidoniou.
Sorry, thank you. Well, I think it's unpleasant to have large illuminated advertising anywhere. That's my personal opinion. But this is in the Thames Conservation Area, and it is also close to a busy junction. So I'm just concerned about whether it might distract drivers. I know there are already there's already advertising there, so can you just ease my concerns that there is some sort of mitigation when it comes to the lighting, particularly at night, and that it is an improvement to the existing advertising board? Thanks.
Thank you. So you might have noticed as part of the officer report that in 2011 advertisement consent was granted for 2 internally illuminated LED advertisement panels. So that has been granted previously. This application is similar, but the LED screens will be smaller. And officers have also further controlled the advertisement compared to the previous one. So I just draw your attention to recommended condition 6, which is the brightness limit. I believe previously it was restricted to a higher candelas per square metres, and now it's less. And then also the recommended condition 7, which is the hours. So this states that the advertisement shall not be illuminated and shall be switched off between the hours of 2300 and 7 the following day, so it would be switched off at night time. I don't believe that was previously included within that 2011 permission as well, so that further controls it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we're ready to move to a vote. Officer recommendation is to grant advertising consent. Can I see those in favour? Those against? Thank you. So that's granted with one vote against. Number 11, Oakley House.
Thank you, Chairman. I would draw, again, members' attention to the addendum report. In addition to the change to paragraph 6.35, I would also seek a verbal update to recommended condition 6, which relates to the... Sorry, let me just find it in my pack. So recommended condition 6, which relates to the separation of commercial and noise-sensitive premises. So the condition included within your pack relates to an enhancement by at least 15 decibels. Officers are recommending that that's changed to 10 decibels. And then the additional change to within the addendum report is a new condition. So I recommended an additional condition, which would be condition 10, and that is to restrict the hours of the commercial units so that they're only permitted to be open to members of the public between the hours of 8 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. So the proposal in front of members this evening is a change of use of the car park to create 2 Class E units with the associated shopfront and external changes to Oakley House. Officers are recommending that planning permission is granted subject to those conditions set out within the report and as verbally mentioned within my speech. That concludes my presentation and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No questions to officers. Okay. With what you've suggested in the addendum report and information in the report itself, officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Okay, that's granted. 12, Treadgold House.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the last item before members this evening, which is a discharge of condition application. This is details reserved by condition 4F, which relates to an entrance door and canopy. The officers have reviewed the details and are satisfied with those, so the officer recommendation is to grant or discharge the condition. That concludes my presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Those against? Okay, no, everyone's in favour. Thank you. That's granted. And thank you, everyone. That concludes the meeting for this evening.